Man, I've had some close calls in construction. Over the course of my career, I've seen so many accidents, emergencies, things happen on the job sites, and I want to tell you about a couple of them. So I remember one time I was working on a project called House 57. It was over here in South Florida. It was a 5-story apartment building, and I remember we had already topped off. Topping off in a building is basically when you've already completed the structure all the way to the roof. It's often accompanied by a celebration, like a little event. But anyway, so we topped off and we were already preparing because this was gonna have like a really nice rooftop deck with a jacuzzi. And we were getting ready to lay down the tile after we finished all the roof work and everything. And I remember my laborer, he was really cool Jamaican guy. He gets on the off-road forklift and he picks up the pallet with all of the mortar mix and the cement, and he brings it up all the way to the 5th floor, and he leaves it there kind of like waiting for us to unload it. And in that, I start having a conversation with the tile guy because we're having some issues about like the coordination of it and the cost or whatever. Can't even remember what we talked about, but we got delayed like 15-20 minutes, and all of a sudden I'm there in the middle of my conversation and I hear blah, and it was that the pallet with like, it must have had hundreds or maybe thousands of pounds of cement on it, and it actually fell straight down. And right below, I had remembered seeing one of the stucco subcontractors workers. He was working down there. So I was like, oh my gosh, like what happened? Like, did this guy get crushed? Like what? So I started freaking out. I ran downstairs, and the guy happened to have actually been looking up by a miracle, and he noticed it. And right when the bags were falling, he told me the story and I couldn't believe it. I'm like, man,
God was on your side, brother.
It was falling. He was able to go under the garage level, and he was able to save himself by inches. Man, you got to be careful in construction because anything can happen. This is why wearing your hard hat is important. This is why wearing, your boots are important with the steel toe, because you never know when something's going to strike. It reminds me of that movie Final Destination. You can't get away from the accidents and the emergencies. In construction, it's not if something happens, it's when something happens, because emergencies happen all the time. Now, I remember another time I was on another project, and we had finished the shell, so they were stripping off for the concrete, they were stripping off the plywood. And I saw a guy, he was on the balcony of the 3rd floor, or maybe it was the 4th floor, but he was on the balcony with no harness. He was trying to take off the formwork. Any little breeze would have knocked the guy over. I got so pissed because I'm like in Spanish, because obviously down here in South Florida, everything is in Spanish. I'm like, you guys are crazy. You're gonna kill yourself on that job site. It's like I lost it. I almost kicked everybody off the job because I was so pissed at how unsafe these guys were with their own lives. Another time I was standing on the 1st floor and I was coordinating some fire sprinkler activities, and I hear ping, bing, and I'm like, what is that? And I look, and the guy from the concrete company, he was cutting off the rebar at the parapet. So the parapet is that little low wall on the top floor on the roof, where usually it's like a 2 to 3 foot wall. So the excess rebar, he was cutting it, and he was just letting it fall 5 floors. Bing, bing. So I look up and I'm like, are you crazy? You're gonna kill somebody. This was like darts coming from heaven. It was scary. I'm like, stop what you're doing. I ran up there, I grabbed the rebar, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry, sir. When I cut it, it breaks. And I go cut it. And I held on to it. I told him, cut it almost all the way through, but don't finish it. So I kind of got him to cut like 90% of the way. And at the end, I just kind of like wiggled the rebar, and I threw it on the floor like like when you drop the mic, but I dropped the rebar, and I go, do it like that. You're gonna kill somebody. I was so pissed. And then you wonder why these old 60-year-old GCs are like, they have that mean, like pissed off look all the time, and they're always yelling at people, because you got some dumb people and some dumb people in construction, man. Seriously. Now, the craziest story, this one was actually pretty nuts. I was doing a project for the University of Miami, and we were having a rebar delivery. The rebar deliveries, they usually have like a 60-foot bed or something like that, like a 40-foot bed, and they put bundles of, a bunch of, I don't know how many come in the bundle, but a stack of rebar. We had the guy was offloading it. He looks, he doesn't see anything. He drops the lever, and right when you hear the crash, the boom, you hear and we ran out there, and there was some kid walking with his cell phone, doesn't pay attention that there's a construction site going on. He doesn't pay attention that there's a safety fence, and we had to obviously have the fence open because we had this giant truck in there, and he drops the rebar on top of the kid, and it rolls down his leg, and it breaks his leg. This was a student. So imagine the panic that we all had, the owner, the liability that there is here, because obviously this is not even a construction accident. This is like an average person freaking out. and he ended up trying to sue. Thank God we had our insurances in place. Crazy stories. I've told you about these safety issues, these things. Now, what I haven't talked about is your construction business. What are you doing right now to grow your business? I know what I'm doing. I created a 20-minute video training designed for busy contractors on what you need to do to sell your first $1 million in construction in your next 12 months. So if you want to watch that video, you want to see what's working in 2023, go ahead and click that link and watch that video, because I know that it's going to help you grow your business. So let's take your business to the next $1 million. And if you're getting some value, go ahead and subscribe so you can get notified every time we release tips and videos all the time.